Hello, everybody. I'm delighted for this podcast to welcome back to the library much loved author and actor Carol Drinkwater. Thanks very much for coming, Carol.
Pleasure.
Carol knows Monaco very well from her acting days for TV. She has been on the jury of the Monte Carlo Television Festival. She's also given a talk at the library in 2006 when she spoke about her beautifully illustrated and very personal journey of acquiring an olive farm in the south of France with her husband, Michel Noll. More recently, Carol did a Zoom chat with me 4 years ago in the library in 2021. Time has flown, Carol.
It's amazing to think so long ago, yes.
Exactly. So I'm very happy that you're physically here with me in the library this time and not on Zoom. So we're going to chat a little bit with you about your Irish heritage. Your mother, Phyllis McCormack, was from County Laois. And Carol, you spent many happy childhood summers there. So we look forward to hearing about that. We'll also be discussing your latest book published by Atlantic this month in July 2025, entitled One Summer in Provence. And I hope we'll have time to chat about all these amazing literary events you've been busy with in Ireland recently. And we will also talk about a little bit in detail about your olive farm and the olive farm series. Those were the memoirs set in the south of France, and they've sold over 1 million copies worldwide. And your solo 17-month journey around the Mediterranean in search of olive trees' mythical secrets, which inspired a 5-part documentary film series for Arte TV and France 5, The Olive Route, which is sold worldwide. So we'd love to hear a little bit about that as well, if that's good, because in particular, you have been invited by UNESCO to help with the olive route around the Mediterranean that was created. So much to talk about. So we'll get stuck in if that's okay. Why don't we start, Carol, if okay with you? You've been busy with the events, as I mentioned, in Ireland, and your recent participation this month in July at the West Cork Literary Festival. And before that, in May and June, you participated at another prestigious festival. In fact, it's Ireland's oldest literary and arts festival, the Listowel Writers Week in County Kerry. And you were an adjudicator there for the Kerry Group Irish Novel of the Year. And you will let us know who the award was bestowed upon. But it's not the first time either that you've played a key role at these festivals. Can you expand for us, Carol?
I go to Ireland quite regularly for festivals. I get asked quite a lot, and I take every opportunity to get back to Ireland. So if there's a festival in the offing, I'll try and make sure that I get myself invited. This year, the Listowel won the Irish Kerry Irish Novel of the Year award, which is very prestigious. It's a €20,000 award, so you need to give some heavy thinking to who you're going to give it to, etc. We read 50 books, I think it was, 50 novels, myself and Paul McVeigh, who was the other adjudicator. It was, the standard was really high. I mean, I have to say that Ireland is pushing out some of the best literary material anywhere in the world at the moment, and certainly in the English-speaking world. I can't really say very much for many other languages, but
Right.
it's not just 2 or 3, it's like 20 books that are above average standard, that really stand out. Long Island, Colm Tobin. The one that won was called Time of the Child, which is Niall Williams. Excellent book, beautiful book, really love it. I said that it was like sitting in a cathedral and hearing music go up over the rafters and come back and settling in your heart. And that's really what I felt when I was reading. I had to stop and say, just let me take that sentence in again. Wow. And that's really quite some achievement. Absolutely. And it wasn't just once or twice in the book, it was like every couple of pages. I said to Paul, are you getting through this? I'm having to stop and savor it. So that was fantastic. It was a wonderful opportunity. It was a short list of 5. only one woman on it, and I fought for a second one, but I lost on that count. But yes,
yeah, some of the names maybe you'll just mention: Christine Dwyer Hickey, Joseph O'Connor, Count Tobin, as you mentioned, Donald Ryan. I mean, those are the
those
top
were the
writers.
four others, along with Niall Williams, who won
on the shortlist.
On the shortlist, yes, indeed. But there were several others that weren't on the shortlist that could easily have been on the shortlist. I mean, we had to be ruthless and start saying, okay, why doesn't this work, or what doesn't, in order that we could make a shortlist.
Right.
Because that's what took the time. Once we got to the shortlist, we could have gone one or two ways with the winner, but it was pretty clear who was going to win it. But getting to the shortlist was a job, because there was so much good material. Exactly. There was at least 10 books that could have been on that shortlist, which is fantastic, in 1 year in Ireland. And then I've just finished reading a book called The Boy from the Sea. And that's also about a child that's abandoned. And that wasn't even on the show. That wasn't even, I think it will be presented next year. That another amazing book, and that was afterwards. Anyway, so yes, I've just been at the West Cork Literary Festival. I literally just come back a couple of days ago, where I had a wonderful time, except that my luggage got lost and it rained and I couldn't go out of the hotel because I had nothing to change into should I get wet.
But plenty of time for reading and plenty cups of tea.
Exactly that, and chatting up, and talking to other authors and people that were there. It's a wonderful festival. I honestly can say secretly that I think it's one of the best festivals I've ever attended. And I've been there 5 or 6 times, and it's never less than that standard of organization, care for authors, material that's covered, all kinds of things, how it is spread out around the town so that other areas of the town, the bookshop, the church, etc., get included, all become part of it. It's a very good festival indeed, and I love to be a part of it. So yes, that's, and just to say that I will be in Bangor later in the year at the Aspects Literary Festival as well, where I'm giving a short one-morning workshop, and I'm also talking about my new book, One Summer in Provence.
Oh, fantastic. My goodness. So that's a lot of reading for you, with a time-consuming reading, but obviously a pleasure for you as well. Carol, can we talk a little bit about your own book that's come out, One Summer in Provence, and your main character, Cecilia Gray? She lives where you have lived for decades now, but in contrast to your character, you have an olive farm, and your character was set in a vineyard, but in the south of France. And recently, in an interview that was done with you in the Irish Times, you were asked about managing the farm. And I just loved your wonderful reply to that. So I'll quote you: "The olive farm memories are many love stories rolled into one, the Mediterranean, olive farming, a man," I presume that's your husband, "a house, and France." Can you tell us more about that, please?
Okay, let me say that the novel, because that's what we're actually, One Summer in Provence, is set actually a little bit further west. It's in the Var, in the Esterel area, where the earth is red and volcanic, and that's quite sort of important to the story, the background of the story, the backdrop, the colouring of the story. Yes, I've lived overlooking the Bay of Cannes, or we have lived in an olive farm, or on an olive farm that we found in 1985, so a long time ago, bought it in 86. It took a year for the deal to go through. And we bought it in bits. In fact, it's taken us decades to get to what we have now, but that's fine. That's part of the journey. It was a complete jungle and a ruin. A jungle and a ruin. Slowly going back to that, I have this idea that as we pass away from this world, it's actually going to that the land and the vegetation is going to reclaim it. Exactly that. And I was saying at the West Cork Literary Festival that I think there's a novel in that too. That we've walked into this jungle, created this love story, created this extraordinary olive oil, which is organic, brought back the pollinators to the land, really done everything to make the place a tiny organic paradise. And that slowly, as we get older and less capable and have less earning power, the land is beginning to creep back towards us, and that we will take our bow from this world and it will go back to what it was. And our story will be a secret veiled within the jungle. And I mentioned that at the Literary Festival, and lots of people in the audience said, "Tell that, Carol, that's a good book." So that's our story, as it were. One Summer in Provence is not my story at all. Celia was an actress, and when her parents died, and there was a trauma that happened 10 years, just over a decade earlier, in London with her husband, when a play they were doing together all went belly up and they lost all their money and everything. It was around that time also that her parents both left the stage, and she inherited the vineyard, which under normal circumstances she and her husband Dominic would never have taken control of, because they had such vital lives in London in the film and television industry. But because of circumstances, she does take it over. He does come with her, and they make a success of it. And just before the story starts, they've won their first award at the Paris Wine Show, which is a big one, to win in Paris for a French wine. And so she wants to celebrate and have a big weekend August party to invite clients, local people that work on the farming, etc. And a few days before the celebrations are due to begin, she receives a letter that's been forwarded to her from her agent in London, from a man called David Hawksmith, who said, "Do you remember me, Celia? I'm the son that you gave up at birth, at my birth. 3 days after he was born, she gave up her child." And she's never had contact. It was in this sense, it's a very relevant Irish story. Indeed. And very interestingly, just to go off my own book, the Niall Williams book, Time of the Child, which won the Kerry Award, is about a child that is found in the cemetery. And the local doctor and his youngest daughter take the child in. Okay. Initially, just in the interim, before the child is going to be sent on elsewhere. And then the story is about how they decide they want to keep the child. So, and then the book Boy from the Sea that I said I'd read is also about a child that's left on the edge of the water, and a family take the little boy in. So it's a very relevant, it's really in the zeitgeist, one could say, in Ireland at the moment, because of all these excavations of bodies of babies that have been found, taken from unmarried women, etc. So I think it's without my knowing it, because it's certainly not my story, but the idea of a child given up in this instance, unlike the Magdalen laundries and all of that, the child is adopted, grows up in under happy circumstances, and then as an adult man wants to find his mother. So that's the story in my novel. Okay. Is that suddenly this 47-year-old man walks into Celia's life and says, "I'm your son." Yes. So it's just as everything's it's on high velocity, everything, because there is going to be this party, they've won this award, there's all kinds of things going on, and Celia, being the kind of warm-hearted woman she is, says, "Well, come to the party," and he turns up with a very unexpected companion. And from there, the book really begins to roll, and all kinds of situations come up for Celia and Dominic, she's never mentioned this child that she gave birth to. He knows nothing about it. Yeah, the husband. Indeed, okay. Indeed, indeed in my own family, that I know that there have been unexpected children that have just appeared at the front door and said, "I am so and so's son," yes, for example. Yeah. So, it's not an uncommon, it's not a common circumstance, but it's not that uncommon.
I think it's fairly common. It's amazing within my own family as well. My grandmother didn't realize that she had been adopted within the family, but this kind of thing happens. Yeah. So there's all sorts of stories that you realize afterwards, because it was just what was done. And everybody just got on with it, and sad circumstances occurred. So I think it's so topical, your book, for so many.
Topical. Yeah. There is also, I came across several women, like grandmothers in Ireland, who had brought up a child as their own, saying, "This is my son." And in fact, it was their daughter's son, or their sister's son, or, right. That within the family, to avoid the scandal, exactly yes. that, and to keep the Catholic Church away from the front door, yes. because they would have taken the child. At that stage in Ireland, they would have taken the child. And in my novel, One Summer in Provence, what happens is that Celia, she tells her parents, and the child is given to a local convent, which also has a very small adoption, what's the word I'm thinking of?
Like an orphanage that
An orphanage, that's the word,
then,
exactly
okay.
that the nuns bring up just a very small number of unwanted children, or children that can't be kept, not necessarily unwanted, but can't be kept
yes, a lot
for
of women
whatever
wanted
the
to keep.
circumstances.
Yes,
exactly
yeah.
that. The
Society
young girls,
dictated.
in many cases, the young girls were quite broken by the fact that they had to give up, and or that the child was taken from them, sort of snatched from them and passed on, and they never knew where, and there was no way of making contact, because at that stage the mother was not allowed to make contact or try to find out about their child. Later there came a rule, certainly in England, that the child could try to find his blood mother. That came in later. So that's one level of the novel. There are several other levels
just
of the
getting
novel.
back to that, Carol, did you do a lot of research? Because that, as you said, it's such a topical issue now in Ireland, and you're seeing a lot of books and authors, Irish authors, who are using those topics as
Claire
material.
Keegan, for example. Claire Keegan's work is, also very, very much in touch with that.
Yeah, we've had her
the new novel, her novel, that Small Things Like These, that Keelan Murphy has made into a film, for example. I mean, it really is something in modern Irish history, and very modern Irish history, though it does go back as far as the Victorians, when the Catholic Church first said, we will take control of the situation. It goes back a long way, but it's very much something that from the 1920s onwards till the 1990s in Ireland, when they closed down the last of these orphanages.
Yeah, which
orphanages
is very recent.
Yes, very. When you think about where we are in the world, I mean, it's it's kind of like something out of the Middle Ages, And it's only now, for example, in Tuam, that they're investigating, and they're actually excavating, and they found over 900 skeletons. Which is
sad,
shocking.
But it's quite deceptive, the title of your book, One Summer in Provence, when you think of what is behind also.
It's not my choice of title. My publishers changed the title. I can't even now remember what my title was, but they wanted a title that they felt was commercial.
Yes, of course.
And that they thought would sell to the Americans and the Brits and things. So,
yes,
some things you win, some things you lose, and I wouldn't say I lost on the title, because I think it's a good title, but I don't think that it necessarily represents all that's in the book. It certainly celebrates the more sensual side of the book, which is about the land, is about the making of the wine, it's about the nature, the food, the huge party which goes on over 3 days, and all the meals that are cooked, and
in a way life
going on.
Exactly
that. And also the joy of the life down here, which is one of the things I love so much, which is about the nature, the perfumes, all that the earth gives you. I mean, it's extraordinarily fecund and abundant. So, all of that is in the book too. I really went on after I made a television series, Carol Drinkwater's Secret Provence, which I think was in 2023 or something. We had such a blast really celebrating Provence, that I thought to myself, I want to bring that energy and that level of celebration of Provence into my next book. So it's a marriage of that and this darker story of a woman who is reunited with her son, if he is her son. Dominic, her husband, doesn't believe he's really her son. So the whole book, right up to the penultimate page, is whether
Don't
or not.
give it away.
I'm not going to give it away. I'm not going to give it away.
I'm stopping you right there. I know, and thank you so much for this copy of the book that you have donated to the library. We're delighted to have it here, and it's quite fascinating. You've made me think of the fact that you're talking about, as you say, marrying two very different, the sad and the to be celebrated side of life,
and the mystery of it.
And the mystery, exactly. But also, it ties in when you think of all those decades in Ireland. Life was almost behind what was happening here in Monaco. And next year, we're actually going to celebrate the 70th anniversary of Princess Grace, her marriage to Prince Rainier. And when you think of that marriage in 1956, how different Ireland was at the same time. and two very different worlds. And so it just made me think of that.
1956, I was a real toddler, and my mother used to take me on the train, and the boat train, we called it, from Holyhead into Dublin.
Right.
And we'd stay with my mother's eldest sister who lived in Dublin then. And you know, I was 3, 4, whatever I was, 56, I was 8, 7. And I remember that there were children running around with no shoes.
Yes, exactly.
You know,
yeah.
and you'd
that was
say,
your first memory of visiting
well,
Ireland,
I don't
with
know
your
that it was
mother.
my first memory, because I was going there from, you know,
Often.
yeah, we were there so often. But certainly I remember I wasn't aware of it as poverty, because I didn't, you know, at that age, I didn't recognize what it was, just what I saw in the streets. I also remember very clearly that I made friends with a boy, a local boy, and we used to meet up behind the post office, because my auntie, my mother's eldest sister, would have, well, she did slap me, but she would have been very angry if she'd known that I was cohorting with a Protestant boy.
Right.
So the divide, not down in the
child,
country, not in County, yes, not in County Laois, down where the family farm is. You know, the Protestants and the Catholics were as one. You know, they would help each other with farm, agricultural material, much smaller community, and the religious thing was not the ruling thing at all. But I remember in Dublin that I was, you know, I remember being asked, you know, is he a Catholic? Always with friends, are they Catholics?
My goodness.
You know, but, so it was still very much something that, I mean, I think it was also particular to that, my aunt's family that I was staying with. You know, I think that she was she was a bit of a terrier about it all. We had to say our prayers. We knelt in the kitchen to say the rosary and things first thing in the morning. You know, stuff like that. So I think it was
Ireland.
That was Ireland for me when you know, and Princess Grace is here getting married.
Yes.
Well,
exactly.
she wasn't Princess Grace. Grace Kelly was here getting married. The glamour of it, and the more forwardness of it. You know, compared to what even Dublin, the capital city.
Yes, indeed.
You know,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so has Ireland influenced your? I mean, obviously you were very close to your mother, and the whole two worlds. I mean, really, England and Ireland were quite close together, because obviously lots of families had connections with both countries due to so much emigration. But how did it influence you in how you brought that to how you led your own life, and you're so international and moving away from home, etc. Your own mother moved away from her home in Ireland to the UK.
Mummy was 17, and it was St. Patrick's Day, when she took the bus from what they call the Pike, which was at the end of the lane down from her family farm, to Dublin, where her elder sister was already living, and her elder sister gave her her watch so that she would know the times when she got to London and everything. So Mummy, and into a war zone. I mean, this was 1942 or 43, so in the middle of the war. So that's what Mummy did, and you know, and then her life took on from, she married my father, and etc., and life went on in England for her.
She was a nurse, wasn't she?
She was a nurse.
Yes,
she was a midwife, and she was a nurse, and then she became a hospital sister. So she did quite well in the, you know, in the job. And then after I was born, soon after that, I think she gave it up. She used to do knitting a lot. She was a champion knitter. I mean, she used to knit wonderful clothes for my sister and I. We identical thing, and they were identical. The Irish knitwear, exactly that. Yeah. And she used to knit enough to pay for my father when he came. He was with the Ralph Reader Gang Show. He was an entertainer with the Royal Air Force in the Second World War. But in order that he could get himself some kind of a degree so that he could have a steady job, even though he was actually going to always be in entertainment and a band leader and all of that, Mummy knitted all the time. She wasn't looking after me, or after my sister as well when she was born, so that they could have enough money to live on. Daddy used to bicycle 20 miles each way to where he was studying, and Mummy knitted so that they had money. But you know, that's the Irish. Yeah, that is the Irish.
Hard workers.
The hard workers and the real steadfastness of getting the job done.
You inherited that, Carol, because I don't know how you have the energy to do all you have. I mean, you literally dropped your bag from being in Cork to being in Monaco via your olive farm. So it's just incredible, and we're going to have a wonderful time now with the American Club of the Riviera, who
Yes,
are
aren't they being
very,
wonderful?
they're
Their
fabulous, yeah.
generosity is extraordinary. Yes.
Yeah, so they're going to host
Yeah.
the lunch later,
Very,
and
very kind.
you'll give more of your story, etc. But that's it's so wonderful to
Can
have
I
that.
just say one thing about what you just asked about? Ireland, when I was a child, and I think it's why almost as soon as I was a little bit after I was old enough to make a decision about my own passport, I decided that I would have an Irish passport, which of course I'm entitled to because of
Yes.
family and everything. Because Ireland for me was where there was family cohesion, where there was the nature of even the very small holding that my family had, where my uncle used to walk me through the wheat fields, which were higher than taller than me, to the river where there was salmon, and kind of bucolic images and bucolic moments. And my uncle, I was crazy for my uncle, totally in love with him, as at the age of 4 or 5, as much as those kind of passions can be. Whereas back home, there was quite a lot of tension in my parents' marriage. My father was out and sometimes gone for days when he was off doing his band work and playing as a musician somewhere else where he had to stay, etc., etc. So mummy had to fend for us quite a lot, and that created a certain amount of, I would say, tension in the family.
Yeah.
And so Ireland for me was where that tension wasn't.
Okay.
Which
So
is
when you
very
went as a
interesting, very
family.
different from the fact that, is he a Catholic? Can you spend time with this boy? Is he a Catholic or a Protestant? Although there was that side of thing in the country, down on the farm, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so attached to nature. I felt that things came together. I felt that there was a safety there. I felt that there was big, wide grandmother's arms that kind of embraced me and held me up and, almost strangled me with love, And it was a very, very important and an early set of emotions and memories that fed into me, and I think have become very important in my work and my life.
Right, exactly. And a feeling of belonging as
Absolutely, a feeling of belonging, yeah. And again, with the land, with the nature, with the growing, with the chickens underneath the washing, with the big hay, the collection of hay.
The haystacks.
Haystacks, exactly that.
Yeah.
Where I could hide, for example, those kind of things.
Exactly, yeah. And that makes me think of just talking about belonging, because you mentioned in the Irish Times interview earlier this month, you described yourself as an Irish Mediterranean rather than British, and I thought that was quite funny.
Didn't go down well in England last week, but they loved it in Cork. And we actually discussed whether it should be Irish Mediterranean or Mediterranean Irish.
There you go. Well, you're really a melting pot of so many nationalities, and has Michel, your husband, tried to make you French yet?
Well, I think the Frenchness you take on, don't you? And especially if you're an actress, you take on certain things. You kind of like a sponge. They come into you. So there are certain things about the French that, of course, I suppose have, become a part of who I am. And I certainly see the world more from a French perspective than a British perspective, for example.
Right.
Definitely that.
Because it is about 40 years you've been living on your olive farm.
It's 40 years, yeah.
Exactly.
But even when I lived in London, I had a flat in Kentish Town. Though some years I was there one night.
Right.
I'd be traveling all the time, and I would have friends to stay, and they looked after it. Half of Equity lived in that flat at one point or another. I'd come home sometimes from the theatre, and there'd be 10 people all sitting on the floor in the sitting room, nattering and things. So, London was. I always knew I wouldn't end up in England. That was for sure.
Feeling, yes, the gut feeling,
and a determination.
Right, absolutely, and that's shown through in all your work, and all of your experiences and your emotions you put into your work and your books and everything. And I'm going off script here, but since Michel, your husband, is a filmmaker, do you make any homemade movies? Again, I'm thinking of the current exhibition in the Palace of Princess Grace, and they show her with the camera in her hand and taking home movies, as
Yeah,
you
home
would. I
movies,
wonder,
yeah.
do between the two of you take home movies of your farm there?
We
and your
don't really do
friends?
home movies, I don't think, but we do lots of photographs. We don't
Right.
necessarily do home movies, but we have worked professionally together. I mean, the
Yes.
the series, The Olive Route, which was the films that go around the Mediterranean that are inspired by my two books, The Olive Route and The Olive Tree. The 17-month journey
Yes.
I did around the Mediterranean in search of the history, the cultivation, the mythology of the olive tree. Michel was the executive producer on that and really fought to, there were times when, especially as around the Arab Spring, because places we were intending to go, we had to cut out of the agenda because some of the television stations said, I'm not having a crew go in there. So we had to rethink.
Okay.
We originally were going to make 10 programs, 10 one-hour programs, and I think we made 5 or 6 in the end.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Right, right, yeah. So constantly having to change and adjust on the
Oh,
go
that's always
together,
the case if you're making a series.
So
Yeah.
there was a lot of pillow talk during that series. From
I'd
the
say
sounds of it,
pillow argument, I'd call it.
There you
Downright
go.
rows.
Exactly. Well, this has been wonderful, but I would like to just finish with one last question, because obviously UNESCO jumped on the opportunity to work with you for the Olive Trail, because this is just such incredible, significant work that you've done to bring the spotlight to the olive tree and history and its importance to the region, such a huge region as the Mediterranean is. Do you want to say a few words on that?
Well, the idea was that UNESCO, with me putting in some advice, there were other people as well, of course, to create an olive route, or to kind of point the steps, as it were, like a map around the Mediterranean, where important archaeological ruins exist still, or certain things that would, in one way or another, link the various countries and nations and the tapestry, to make what could be a kind of peaceful journey around the Mediterranean. Well, you can see how well that's done. It's heartbreaking. We didn't finally get it off the ground because as a completed project, though I worked on it for a while. So it was a little fractious sometimes. Right. But I think the work still done is valuable work, even though in the end we haven't managed to create peace in the Middle East, which is,
that's another story.
One of the things that breaks my heart almost more than anything else, and also to know that I went to those places and found clues and seeds and material that went back 6,000, 7,000 years. And if I went back now, I don't dare think what could be left of any of that, So I'm very pleased that I at least have in those books the olive root and the olive tree. The olive root is the Middle Eastern one. The olive tree is more the Western Mediterranean. There are pointers and things in those books that at least existed at that moment in time when I was there.
Exactly.
So I'm very pleased I did that journey. It was very tough sometimes. It was 17 months on my own. I did come back sometimes because I, couldn't have done that entirely. Yeah. I flew back for Christmas once, or, and it was quite lonely sometimes, though I met amazing people.
It's such a huge undertaking on your own. And
it was scary sometimes. Yeah. I mean, being in Israel and the West Bank, and being in Bethlehem, which is wonderful. Yeah. And we went back to Bethlehem. We did make a film called The Olive Tree in the Holy Land, which I think is actually quite an important film. Mm. That's one of the documentaries in the Olive Route series, and I do think it's an important film. And I directed a little bit of that,
Well, you've put your mark on so much, Carol. It's a fascinating, and it's incredible how much you've achieved, and yet more to come. You're so prolific. So. You're so prolific. It's amazing. Well, I look forward to you coming back for your next visit, next book, when that will be. And thank you so much for joining us here at the Princess Grace Irish Library, and have a wonderful summer.
Thank you very much. I'm always honoured to be invited back here. I love this place. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol.